When you watch the mainstream media news, do you feel a little twitch? Is there a tingle in your left hand? Is your jaw locked? We have the solution. Welcome to Reasonable Arguments, the podcast where thoughtful debate meets unfiltered fun. Coming to you from Sarasota, Florida, where your hosts, Jamie Miller and Jennifer Bash, make sense of the chaos. Together, we mix informed conservative commentary, playful banter, and just the right amount of nonsense to keep it entertaining. This is Reasonable Arguments, and now your hosts, husband and wife duo, Jamie and Jennifer.
Hey, babe.
Hello, we are back, and we
are back in the saddle. We had about a week hiatus. Jennifer's been working hard on getting our studio ready, which is what we're going to be recording from next time after we have this wonderful guest today. But first, you have a big announcement, Jennifer.
How are you? You started this whole thing. I'm supposed to start the whole thing.
Oh, well, go ahead. That was actually really good.
We may keep it. We'll see. All right. So we are back for our third installment of the immigration series that we have, which is being brought to you today by... This episode of Reasonable Arguments is brought to you by Burn Bear Coffee. Bold blends crafted to awaken your spirit and fuel your journey. Visit burnbearcoffee.com and grab a bag of bold. So there we go.
Burn Bear Coffee just made history.
Don't you love it? I love it. All right. So this episode, we have Roy Beck. And when I was doing research on Roy, I am such a visual person. And one of the things that he does with Gumballs was just completely intriguing to me, and I loved it. So let's talk about who Roy is. He is a former journalist, author, and the founder of Numbers USA. His notable works are The Case Against Immigration. His most recent books are The Emancipation, Reclamation, and Back of the Hiring Line. But we have to talk about this Gumball video that he did on poverty and immigration. So let's bring Roy to the stage. Hello, Roy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
I loved this Gumball video. I can't even tell you. Like I said, I am a visual person. So watching this and you showing it like that just made the difference for me. I can't even tell you.
I put that together when I was asked by my son, who at the time was in the 7th grade. This is back in the 1990s, to do a little demonstration. I won't say about how it came about, other than the fact that we're here in Arlington, Virginia. The kids in these schools all have parents that tend to have interesting jobs, and so you could bring parents in to talk. They have 2 weeks every year where they do that. And so this was put together along with something else I did for 7th graders.
Oh, my God.
7th graders understand proportionality, numbers, this kind of thing. And when I was showing this a few weeks later in an office to some sort of hard and cynical government people, one of the things they said was, one fellow says, well, did the students understand? I said, yeah, they understood it fine. They looked at another person in the hallway and says, well, maybe members of Congress could understand this. So 7th graders could, but yes, it is interesting. I was taught in University of Missouri School of Journalism, and I don't think this is unusual there, for us to write at a 7th grade level, not like a 7th grade level of experience, but a 7th grade level of reading comprehension, because people read fast and all that kind of thing. Well, so I think the Gumballs has been a hit because it was it had a 7th grade audience in mind. And the crazy thing is that it's been put up by so many people on their own platforms through the years, but the ones we've tracked add up to more than 200 million views. Can you believe that? Just think if we had monetized that. But 200 million views, and all over the world. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the fact that it got your attention is an example of it just happened to be something that worked. Now we re-recorded it in 2010, but it's still the 2010 version that's out there right now.
Yeah, it
Well,
just, but I think that that's one of the things like Jamie and I had talked about on one of our other podcasts about, with Doge coming in and cleaning up all of the money that was just going everywhere. And one of the things that I said is, people, maybe we need to have like a virtual wallet that shows us how much money we get at the
mhm,
beginning of an administration and then watch that money dwindle, because I think having something visible makes it a whole lot easier to understand than words, right? So, okay, so you have the two new books out, the two newest books,
Mhm.
that are, I'm assuming we can get these on Amazon.
Yeah, well, the hiring line is on Amazon, easy to get, and you can read some people can read some good reviews. There's also a segment of the audiobook that's available as well. But it's back of the hiring line.
200-year history of immigration surges, employer bias, and depression of Black wealth.
I wanted to get the right words there, but so um, that sounds a little provocative there. And then the second one is not on Amazon because it's actually a 60-page booklet that is done in kind of I'd say high school style with a lot of vintage pictures and all. And it's the Emancipation Reclamation, and the key point of that is that the 1960, the 1925 or 1924 to 1965 period, in which Congress kept annual immigration low, was the only great period of economic advancement for the descendants of American slavery. And so it's actually it's quite exciting because it's like there is really something that can be done that can work with the whole underclass of America, but particularly the Black underclass, which is larger percentage wise, and it's happened before. It's an amazing story that frankly, I don't know if it's ever been taught in history, in history classes, but it's the civil rights advances of the 1960s and beyond would not have happened certainly that soon without the 1924 act that reduced immigration by over 2/3. And really, the bottom line case for what we do at Numbers USA is that if we would do that again, and we're not even talking about 2/3, you could cut annual legal immigration in half and basically stop any growth in illegal immigration, we would see incredible economic benefits, a society of much less income disparity. It'd just be a much better society. And that's what happened in those 40 years. Everything wasn't perfect in those 40 years, but everything was getting better. That's the thing. We became a more and more egalitarian, a more cohesive country because the have-nots were gaining faster economically than the haves, and it wasn't at the expense of the haves. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't taking money away from the wealthy or the affluent or the upper middle class. They were still actually gaining too. But in those years, the people in the bottom were gaining much faster. It was just a much fair world. And there were different things going on, but the lowered immigration rate was a significant part of it. So that is that booklet. And of course, that story is contained in the back of the hiring line book as
Okay.
well.
So I have one more question for you because I know Jamie's chomping at the bit to ask you questions, but I have to ask you, how did you get into immigration?
But I was a newspaper reporter from the late 60s until 1990, and I covered all kinds of things. But I did specialize in environmental and conservation reporting in the 60s and 70s. So I was early on in that field. I covered everything. I worked for newspapers in Missouri, daily newspapers, Missouri, Michigan, Cincinnati, and I covered a lot of the uh, urban renewal issues, the economic issues. I covered crime, police, the kind of things that happens when you're not on the gigantic newspapers. I covered a little bit of everything. And starting in the early 80s, I was made aware of the fact that immigration policy had been radically changed by a law in 1965, and it took a while for it to have its major effects. But by 1980, it was really having some major effects. And what I found as I looked in more at it was that almost all the issues that I was covering that I cared about, not as a reporter, I was kind of old style 20th century American journalism. It wasn't that I was taking a stand on what the solutions were, but I was taking a stand on things that concerned me. I reported on those things and then tried to report fairly from, all types of sides. People are trying to find solutions. I just found that our immigration policy, the changes were making almost everything harder to improve. That it was the numerical level had it tripled by the 80s, it quadrupled by the 90s, and that numerical level had really changed things. And by 1990, I was here in Washington D.C. I'd spent actually a few years in Dallas, not on a daily newspaper, but a weekly United Methodist paper, covering religion and the intersection of religion and public policy and social issues. And then I came to Washington and covered Congress for a chain of newspapers. And in 1990, I covered the hearings on them deciding to increase immigration from about 600,000 a year to about 1 million a year.
Oh, wow.
And just a couple of weeks after they passed that law, I thought, I don't think I can be an observer anymore. I think I don't see media. I just don't see most institutions, people really paying attention to what's happening here. And so I was concerned. I was concerned in terms of its effect on our becoming a more and more unequal type of society. I was concerned about what it was doing in terms of the racial relations in this country. I was concerned about how it was affecting the large increase in population growth having to do with quality of life issues, congestion, habitat protection. In other words, all these things that I was concerned about, immigration connected to it. So I after 20 some years, left the profession of daily journalism and began writing magazine articles and books.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, you mentioned that the kind of the linchpin for you was when we reached 1 million people of illegal immigrants per year. And that's about where we are now, a little bit more than 1 million.
Yeah, it's stayed about the same.
Which almost seems insignificant compared to what we've had in illegal immigration over the last 4 years, which is this explosion. So what's the best way to frame, number one, the long-term implications of having, more than 1 million people come here legally, and also kind of balance that with, hey, if we cut out all illegal immigrants, which was somewhere between 10 and 20 million or whatever that number actually is, who came across the border over the last 4 years, a lot of people might see that as, oh, we're having this really low immigration rate at this point because we're down to 1 million. So how do you balance that, kind of public perception with the reality of, the million has been significant, and you even suggest that that's probably twice as many as we should be allowing in each year.
Yeah. All good points, and it's you got to get to some numbers to put these in proportion. And I actually got a few numbers here beside me because I want to use the real numbers.
Mm-hmm.
The estimates based on the government data and the Center for Immigration Studies, I think you're familiar with them. They've worked with this, and they're very trustworthy in this. But these are from the Census Bureau data, and it looks like that something like let's see, let me get this straight. Yeah, between 11.5 and 12.5 million new arrivals, foreign arrivals, in the 4 years of Biden.
Wow.
So now, is that legal and illegal together, or is that just
it's both? So 11.5 to 12.5 million. About 4 million of that was legal. We know what's legal because legal you're following it. It's
tracked it. Yeah.
So that means that between 7.5 and 8.5 million, came in illegally, or just turned himself in at the border, and Biden had him waved in and gave him work permits. The point is, they were uninvited, and they're for the most part unvetted. But again, so that many people. Now, it took our organization really feels that we should not have a net increase of foreign born in the country at all. We should have basically the same number coming in as die or leave the country each year. That's one way of looking at it. Right now, it looks like we have 53 million foreign born in the United States. So 330 million plus people in the country, and 53 million of them were born citizens of another country. And I believe, what are they saying now? It looks like the estimate now is about 15 million of them. That's when you have real numbers to crunch. It looks like about 15 million of them are illegal. 53 million foreign born. Now, even if all 53,
that's almost 1 out of 5. That's 17, 18%.
And even if every one of them was legal, every one of them brought in with them a foreign experience, an experience of a different political system, a different culture, usually a different language, often a different religion. In other words, there's all of these major differences that you've got 53 million who are not anchored in having grown up in the American society. Now, America, there's no question in my mind, America has tremendous assimilative capacity compared with most countries. But there are thresholds. We passed that threshold long ago. We've done that before. 100 and some years ago, during the Ellis Island period, we overwhelmed that threshold back then too. So it doesn't matter. Then they were mainly coming from Europe. It still was too much. It overwhelmed our cultural systems. So you are deciding to fundamentally change the country if you allow 53 million people come in. Now, 15 million of them are here illegally, uninvited, etc. That is an incredible thing. So let's just say that the President Trump is able to move all, what are we looking at? You say 8.5 million. Well, there was an 8.5 million increase, but the thing is that there were more than that came in illegally. It's just like some illegals left and some died and some became legal. But the thing is, let's just say we get rid of 10 million. We move 10 million illegal aliens out. It only puts us back to where we were at the beginning of the Biden administration. It also doesn't even put us back to where we were at the beginning of the Trump administration, because the first Trump administration, the foreign-born population still grew. The illegal population did have some drop. That was good. But the thing is that Donald Trump was elected president in 2016 because of the immigration issue. Now, there were other issues, and people can argue, look, this is the kind of thing you can have a barroom argument about. But my contention is Donald Trump never would have been the nominee. He would never have gotten traction in 2015 if he hadn't had the immigration issue to jump on and be able to, through Jeff Sessions, prove to the immigration restrictionists that he was serious about it. That made him viable as a nominee. And the people's feeling of distrust of the government comes from a lot of different ways. But I'm certainly not the first person to say this, and not even the person to say it the loudest. But most Americans are pretty much aware that since 1986, the government, Republican, Democrat presidents, Republican and Democratic leaders of Congress, have lied to the American people. They've constantly said, let's give out some more benefits. Let's have this amnesty, that amnesty, and we're going to control illegal immigration. They give the benefits, they give the amnesties. There were 6 amnesties, one in 86, but there were 5 more that happened, small ones, in the 90s. And then Republican or Democratic presidents, administrations, never gave the people what they promised, which was that they would enforce the law. They haven't done it. And so that built up such a feeling that Donald Trump became possible. He would not have looked possible. Nobody thought it was possible in 2014, right? So the thing is that if we succeeded in getting Biden's 10 million illegal aliens out of the country, we're only back to the point where we still have the problem. And our point is that we don't really need any more immigrants right now, but there are reasons to continue to have immigration, mainly because you think people, American citizens ought to be able to, they ought to be able to marry and adopt overseas as they choose. That's a right that we think that Americans ought to have. We also believe that when immigrants come in for whatever reasons, that they ought to be able to bring their minor children and their spouses. But beyond that, there's not much legal immigration that you could really say the America needs right now when you've got, even you take 10 million away and you've got 43 million foreign born in the country already.
So do you think that this is based on voters? That Biden opened the borders for that?
There's lots of speculation, what's in people's minds. The thing is that I'm of the view, and we're of the view that illegal voting is not a major issue in this country. That most illegal aliens, almost all illegal aliens aren't succeeding in voting or changing elections. We are in favor of the SAVE Act, which requires voter ID to vote. And we're recording this today, but we think that's going to be voted in the House tomorrow. And we hope it'll go to the Senate. We'd like to see it because Americans deserve to have a sense of that we can count on the voting process. So I don't think it's so. If people think that they're bringing illegal aliens because they can get them to throw the elections, I don't think that's going to work very well. However, some people have a long view, and they know one amnesty after another, you change things. I do think that in the 90s, and really, I think maybe up until 4 or 8 years ago, there was this feeling that you're going to bring enough illegal aliens in, enough of them would eventually be amnestied in one way or the other. They would vote, and they would overwhelmingly vote for Democrats. Mm-hmm. But look what's happened with Hispanic voting.
Yeah.
It turns out that immigrants, whether they're from Latin America or whether they're from Italy 100 years ago, once immigrants are here for a generation, especially you get the second generation, they do start to think more like this is their country. Sure. And they're hurt by too much immigration, not because immigrants are bad people. It's not, that has nothing to do with it. It's not about the value of the person. It's just that we have economics that are labor economics. That's the biggest thing as far as we're concerned. It just undermines the people here, the workers that are here and their families. So I think it's the people who are doing this to the country because they think that somehow or another they're going to get a vote advantage. They're kind of really undermining the country for something that's probably not even going to work for them. So I do think that probably the number one reason we have this level of immigration is on the right, cheap labor. I'm talking about the business right. They want high immigration to keep wages down. They don't want to go back to the 50s and the 60s when workers had much more of a not equality, but less of a divide between the workers and the owners of capital. So that's one reason we have it. On the left, and this is the real left, I don't want to call them liberals, but the left, they want to destabilize America. That's the way the left has tended to work all over the world. You destabilize a society in order to turn it into a different kind of society. And there's no question that this high level immigration, especially this crazy illegal immigration level, is destabilizing.
Without question. I would like to say one thing, Roy, that in 2011, I did predict a Donald Trump presidency.
Did you?
I predicted in Variety magazine, of all places, that Donald Trump would run against and beat Barack Obama in 2012 because I thought that at that time Republicans would nominate a businessman. They just nominated the wrong one in Mitt Romney. So I think I'm the second person after The Simpsons who predicted it. So
well, that's I did not know that about you, but I have to put you up on my shelf as with 10 or
right
12.
next to The Simpsons. Right next to The Simpsons. So Yeah, I always like to throw that in there because it's one of my little claims to fame that I like to
So Jennifer,
throw.
how well does that work whenever you're having like a domestic argument for him
Oh,
saying
you
that
have no idea.
It's very short, Roy. Domestic arguments here are so short. I can't even tell you.
Uh,
So
I will say when we first started dating, he would throw facts at me and I didn't believe him. So I would have to Google a lot. Like it was stupid facts, like Band-Aids are, other than Johnson Band-Aids, all other Band-Aids are made in Sarasota. Like number one, who even knows that? And who brings it up in conversation?
yeah,
So
but
yeah, so I had to Google.
but it's apparently apparently great date bait.
yeah,
True
it
story.
worked.
True story. One of my homework assignments was he gave me a list of YouTube greatest speeches, his favorite political speeches in history, and he has since wrote a book about it. But he
Okay.
gave me links to every single one of the speeches and had me watch them and basically report back.
It's titled American Speeches That Changed History, but
Yeah,
that I
And,
always
and
say
I
my
still
next
married him.
it helped you get your woman.
my next book is Dating for Nerds. Yeah, absolutely. So, but we're gonna so I have one question and then we want to get to the meat of one of your major things that you're talking about today. But if you could change one thing about illegal or legal immigration today that would impact border security or visa overstays or whatever it is, what is the one thing that if you could whisper in Donald Trump's ear that you think would be a generational difference, what would it be?
Yeah, all right, that's good. I like it. The there's so many things. There's so many answers to illegal immigration, but our position has always been take away the jobs magnet. That we you don't have to have this many people coming in if you didn't have the jobs magnet, because that's what most of them come in from. So I would, we have the E-Verify system. It's been being perfected since the 90s, expanded. The majority, not a vast majority, but majority of all hires in America are run through the E-Verify system, have been for years. And just to mandate it. It's not mandated except for federal workers. And then in some states, there's several states that have mandated it for state workers. Some of them are wider and for all employers of more than 25, whatever. But if you have a verification system, it's been around for almost 30 years now.
Yeah, I know this has been a debate in Florida for a long time. I'm not sure exactly where we ended up.
Well, it's getting better in Florida. Florida's one of the leaders.
Yeah, but we've had agriculture has obviously been one of our three legs of our stool, economic stool here in Florida for a very long time. Tourism and I like to say senior citizens are the other two.
So, but yes, to mandate that, there are bills in every Congress to do that. It has to be done by Congress. It's not something. It's not just something that the president can do, and you just do it. And you take away the jobs magnet, and then this is what's interesting. It sounds a little like the main people that would be coming in. There'd be two different kinds of people that would still be trying to get in. Adventurers, young adventurers that just want to, for some reason can't get in legally and they want to travel around the country and all that kind of stuff. Like a lot of Americans are illegal travelers in other countries too. They overstay their visas and stuff. But then, the bad guys, your bad guys will still be trying to get in, but your border patrol and everybody else, they wouldn't be having sift through tens of millions of people every year. They'd just be dealing with bad guys. So, the president has really done an amazing job, immediately on the border right now. We'll see whether it holds. Right now it scared the illegal business, the cartels and all back. We'll see. They usually find ways to get around, but if he keeps his nerve he can really control that border. But people have to remember that the majority, until Biden, the majority of illegal aliens in this country arrive on visitor visas, and then they don't leave. So
Yeah, they fly in.
yeah, that's why the e-verify at the workplace is that, and I would do it. It would deal with most of the issue.
Right. So how does high immigration, particularly low skill immigration, affect wage growth and job competition for American workers?
Yeah, we there's a number of economists that have done a lot of really great work on this issue. We know without having any studies, we know that the inflation adjusted wages for every part of the American workers who have less than a college degree has declined over the last 30 years. So that's after, for the most part, a whole history of rising. So it's declined. And for some parts, some segments, it's declined just precipitously, especially for people who at the lower education levels. There's recent studies in the last couple of years that have discovered that half of Americans who graduate have college degrees, that their wages are going down too. It turns out that only the top half of the college graduates in the country have seen real wage increases since then. So it's very clear that mass immigration creates a less egalitarian society. It makes it harder for people. The whole idea that they work hard and play by the rules. Remember, that was Bill Clinton's. That was his mantra. Well, that people work hard and play by the rules have a chance to get ahead. They can move. There's class movement, but we've seen less and less of that. I'm sorry, I may not have answered your whole question there.
No, I think that's perfect. But that leads into kind of what is the argument of immigrants do the jobs that Americans won't do. When I was a kid, I grew up in rural Florida, and we would pick cantaloupes during the day, load them on a truck, and then go take the tomatoes and work in the packing house until 3 a.m, and then start the next morning at 7 a.m. I was doing that from the time I was 13. So, I'm not somebody who buys into Americans aren't willing to work, but what's your opinion?
How many cantaloupes did you eat during the day, or did you get tired of them?
Well, the problem is there's enough of them rotting out there in that field that they're not very appetizing.
Okay. I found whenever I never worked on it, I just had some cantaloupes in my agriculture work, but I that's what I did instead of drinking water. I'd open up and eat a cantaloupe every once in a while. The
watermelons I would eat. The cantaloupes, I went decades without eating cantaloupes. Like those things that were just horrible once they were rotten.
Well, good for you. And of course, you bring up something that look. Our philosophy is that there should be no job in America that is an undignified job.
Right.
It's like if it's a job that needs to be done, a person shouldn't be living in poverty to do it. But the immigration just messes up the free market on what happens with wages and everything else. And of course, some of these jobs are not all that attractive, and that's why teenagers used to do most of them. And as they're seasonal, I grew up in the Ozarks, and so for me, it was more like it was cutting, raking, and baling hay. That was what what I got through. But anyway, these are people who say that there are jobs in America that Americans won't do, even though Americans used to do them, are basically saying that they don't believe in free market economics. And they're basically saying a lot of the American people should live on a style of living that is based on semi-slave labor. They're longing for the days to bring back some kind of slavery. It's like they don't really want to be slaves, but they want people to work for slave wages. They want to have benefits that really they haven't earned, they haven't deserved. And I really don't think, I think there are very few Americans who, when you really put it to them, will say that they think that the people who are doing those jobs that illegal aliens are doing right now, that people that are doing those jobs should live in poverty. I mean, if you just put it to them, do you, especially since the biggest protector of illegal immigration are liberals. It's like, is that really what they believe as liberals? That there ought to be a serf class in the United States?
No, right. Absolutely not. So I think this may be the foundation. This next question may kind of swing us back towards the Gumball video a little bit, but can immigration policy be both compassionate and economically responsible?
Yeah. Well, so I've been giving occasionally some guest lectures in colleges since the 90s when somebody gets brave enough to invite me in that basically looks at what is it to have a humane immigration policy. And the problem is that the people who have made the decisions for mass immigration think that mass immigration, the only humane issue is what's humane toward a person who wants to move here. But there are 4 types of people you have to consider. And one of them is, how does that affect the people in the bottom, that are already here? I mean, what's humane for them? And that's the thing that's lost most, is that the people who make the decisions, who run the government, who are working in the legislatures, they, for the most part, are out of touch with the people who are working at these less than sustainable type wages. So, that's part of the question of what is a moral position. Another thing that's missed is, what does it do to the people in the sending community to take these people out of those communities? Because there's a lot of literature that says, by the way, we do not get I disagree with people who look at illegal aliens as being like the dregs of society. I mean, yeah, some of them, the criminals and stuff, but no, the illegal aliens that come to this country tend to be very, they're hardworking. I mean, and they're driven. Otherwise they wouldn't make this effort. It's not necessarily easy to get here illegally. It's not easy to get started and all that stuff. These are energetic people, and but they are the potential change agents in those other countries. Our illegal immigration system is constantly a release valve on the pressures in those sending countries to improve their conditions. So what about, no matter how many illegal aliens we take, the vast majority of people who are like those illegal aliens are still in those countries. Right. And so for me, the people who try to make a moral argument that we owe it to these people, because that's why I hear this a lot. Well, the thing is that they're still worse off than our poorest people. Actually, that's not actually true for all of them, but some of them are. They are living conditions that are worse off than our poorest people. So that's, to them, that makes it okay. But the thing is, what about all those other people left behind? And
I had a perfect example. I had a perfect example today. I was speaking at a Rotary Club, and prior to that, evidently this Rotary Club is doing kind of a series on immigration. And so the person who spoke before me was an OBGYN from Guyana. And he gave this stirring story of, his trek to America, how he got here, and how fortunate he is to be here, and how generous our community is to his wife and his family. And I didn't put him on the spot publicly, obviously, but afterwards I went up and asked him. I was like, he talked about he came from a village of 200 people, and his mother had to go to a village 10 miles away to deliver him and his 9 brothers and sisters. And so I just went up to him afterwards. I was like, well, who's delivering babies in your village in Guyana?
Wow.
And He's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I was like, I'm so glad you're here. Like, I'm genuinely glad you're here, but I'm also sad for the people who you left behind in need of your services. And he was just kind of taken aback. He was like, wow, that's a great way to put it. And he just, we kind of left the conversation there. We didn't argue about it. We were just kind of making a couple of points to each other. But just today I had that experience
Wow.
of somebody
Wow.
and it's just incredible to me that here he is, in Guyana they must need OBGYNs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's left.
And here's the other thing. We have American-born kids who can pass the entrance exams, but they still don't get into medical school because there's not enough slots for them.
Mhm.
It's not like in a country of 335 million, whatever we are right now, we can produce enough doctors. we can produce
True.
enough doctors, and we're stealing these people from enticing them from these other countries that need them so badly. Occasionally you get somebody who has gone forward and gotten into a highly skill, a specific skill that isn't really needed in their home country. That happens. But for the most part, what are we doing? That's part of this is part of the ethics of the whole thing. It's like so basically the way I see it is that we are trying to be humanitarian to the people who want to come to this country at the expense of usually the poorest, least advantaged people in our country, in taking away some of the most skilled and certainly the most driven people from those countries where there's so many people that need that leadership. It's just there's to me there's just very, very little ethical basis for having the high immigration program that we have today. And it's
Mhm.
and whereas in most of the mass media, what you hear is that there's this humanitarian, if you're moral, if you're ethical, if you're humane, you want to bring in as many people as possible. And it's like it's such a superficial look at the overall situation. And why is that prevailed for so many decades? Well, I think it's prevailed partly because a lot of the people who control the media and lots of other things are people who themselves benefit from having cheaper labor. Uh, and it's, let's face it, about a third of the United States are college educated people, college degree people, and um, people at the top uh, do have a lot of benefits from having so many people working for less money.
I think
And
we should have
where's the
like
morality in that?
I think we should have like an adopt an illegal alien or illegal immigrant program. So if you are for letting these people in, let them come live with you. You can take care of them and see how that works out. And
Now,
I just have one more question.
yeah.
Is there any other country that has to deal with immigration issues like we do?
Well, there are some other countries that have some similar issues, and especially proportionately, um, Canada, Australia. Uh, there's much smaller countries. They actually take in proportionally more than we do, and it's having the same effect in those countries. Um, the Australia is becoming more and more less like us. They're trying to protect, their way of life, and also they have a little bit more of an egalitarian past to protect. Canada, is kind of in an uproar back and forth right now because they've just gone through a period where it's almost like they're. I hate to. I don't want to seem like I'm speaking ill of Canada because there's so many Canadians I know who don't have this problem. It's just almost like they don't have a sense of identity, and they're just willing to become a sort of just some kind of a global workforce or something. But there's, it's they're a different kind of country, and they're also a very small population. But we're pretty unique in what we've done, And just think of it. I mean, we get back to it. We have 53 million foreign-born people in
Yeah.
this country. How
So
does that not totally, well, not totally, but very, very significantly change the whole nature of a country?
So looking forward to, the next 10, 20 years, what does that look like? Does either side have momentum? We certainly have seen the immediate success of just saying, hey, we're not going to let you just come in carte blanche. We're not going to give you money. We're not going to give you apps to get here. And it seems like some of the NGOs had money cut off that was helping them
Yeah.
get here. I always argued, like, who's paying for the Band-Aids in 1,000-mile trek of people? Who's buying the food? What are you doing with the human waste? What are you, like, I've always asked these questions, and nobody could answer these practical application questions of how is this even happening to move
Right.
millions of people 1,000 miles to our border. That's not done for free. That is costing money. People are breaking their legs and twisting their ankles and minor injuries that have to be taken care of. Who's paying for all that? And evidently we probably were through the American Red Cross. But what does the next 10 or 20 years? I kind of went on a tangent there with you, Roy. So Jennifer's used to it. But what do the next 10 or 20 years look like? And does either side have momentum? And, can we solve it without, people claiming, xenophobia and bigotry? I packed a lot into that one, but I know we only have you for a little bit more time, and we would like to get to a few lightning round questions, but if we have time to do that.
Yeah. Well, boys, so I've been working on this full time for 35 years now. And my wife's father, when I left the newspaper business, he confided to my wife, since of course, my wife is totally capable. She has a career. She's able to take care of herself, but he was old fashioned. He goes, I'm worried about you, Shirley. I mean, what's Roy going to, now he's left the newspaper. What's he going to do whenever this immigration problem gets solved? That was 1990. So
Don't
to
you wish you
say,
could talk to him
It
today?
seems so simple, right? If it was only that simple, right?
and he did live to 101, but he still didn't live nearly long enough to. But no, I mean, I have no idea. Because of that experience, it's like, what are we going to be at in 20 years? The problem, we've been at loggerheads for really 30 years, because the other side, the open borders people, they're totally frustrated too, because basically, Numbers USA, we've been one of the leaders in grassroots mobilization. We pretty well, after the year 2000, we pretty well stopped. We stopped all the new amnesties. We stopped all kinds of things until Biden came in, and then it's like, we had no idea somebody would just break the law universally like he did on the border. That's amazing, to just flag through another 10, 12 million people. So in some ways, it's like, it's going to take everything possible in the Trump administration to just clean up the mess, and I can't imagine getting 10, 12 million out of the country. And that just gets us back to where we were at the beginning of the Biden administration.
Yeah, it's another practical application issue. How do you move 10 million people? Like, what's the,
and
how do you even do it?
And the people, the people that I've worked with for years have been inside DHS, been outside, all around. 600,000 a year may be about as many as you can deport. The most we've ever deported is less than 300,000 a year. Okay. Well, let's do the math. Let's just say it's 600,000 and he's waved through, 10 million, 10 or 12 million.
Yeah,
however, what we do know, and this is what we believe, and that is, say that you aggressively double it, and you do remove 600,000, and you mandate E-Verify, you take away the jobs magnet over the next 2 years. Those two things together, the fear factor, the harder and harder to get a job, or at least a legitimate job, a legal job. We know that, even in the Trump administration, people were going, the first one, people were going home, but he wasn't very aggressive, actually. We feel like he really way underperformed on his promises. We feel like it's a better Trump this time, but it's like he's Trump, and he gets off on sidetracks, and for us, it's like, I want to see the things that move the most numbers. I want to see the most illegal immigrants leaving, which is not going to be based on a few plane loads of Venezuelans that you're putting in the El Salvador prisons. It's big news, but that's not what we're looking for. We need to be moving hundreds of thousands of people out of this country before they're very rooted. These 10 million that Biden let in, they're not that rooted yet. And that's what's got to happen these next 4 years, is moving that out. And that's not going to here's the thing. The 10 million that have been here quite a long time now, 15, 20 more years. It is more disruptive as they're moved out. So but these first 10 million, let's get them out fast before they get rooted in. How would the economy do if we moved out all, 15 million, the official 15 million? It'd probably be too much. I'd probably be opposed to it. What we want is a more functioning society, and I don't want something that is going to immediately create crisis. So that means I don't really have to worry about it. There's no way anybody's going to get 15 million people out of this country in the next 4 years, but we can be moving them fast, and I think that sends the message. People stop moving in, especially with E-Verify. You can't get a decent job. I think we sort of saw most of the intake. Biden, in a way, it's almost like he deliberately thought, I'm going to make sure that the people who are wanting to tighten the labor market and improve wages for the workers, American workers, I'm going to make sure they can't do it for another 10 years because they're going to have all these illegal aliens they've got to deal with. So I'm not very optimistic about where we're going to be in the next 10 years. I don't know about 20, in terms of where I hoped we would be 4 years ago. But I am optimistic that we can be a whole lot better than we are right now.
Sure. Good. Okay, so if you have enough time, we'll just do a couple of these. Are supposed to be quick takes.
Okay.
None of these are.
I can tell you're nervous because you're thinking, I don't think this guy answers things.
No, listen, Roy. You and I sing off the same same hymn book, but you can take as much time to answer.
I'll try to be fast.
So, but we just kind of do this at the end. So, but these are complex issues. So take the time that you want to answer. There's only 4 of them. So, should birthright citizenship be reevaluated? Absolutely.
There's only one other country, advanced economy in the world that offers it, and that's Canada. It's a medieval concept.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's no way that we can. It's ridiculous because now we have people from China flying here to have a baby, have a dual passport, only to be taken back to communist China, be raised there as a communist, and then 20 years from now, it's a page right out of Sun Tzu.
Yeah, exactly.
That 20 years from now, or now it's probably 15 or even 10 years in the future that this is, because it's been going on for
still the lightning
already.
round?
What's that, Jennifer?
Is this still the lightning round?
Oh,
jeez.
He talked longer than you did, Roy.
Well, that's okay. I'm not. Oh boy. And I'm between. At least on the screen, I'm between the two of you.
Yeah, at least just go like this. Yeah, that's right. Okay, Jennifer, what's your view on guest worker programs? Helpful solution or policy trap?
No, it can be a helpful solution, and there are ways to create guest worker programs that would be fair, that where they would be used for short-term kind of emergency situations, and but Congress has never passed anything that has those kind of rules. So right now, there's no guest worker program that should be kept as it is. But if we can get the legal immigration, by the way, our positions would reduce legal immigration from 1 million a year to 500,000 a year. 500,000 a year is still double what it was in the 60s. It's about what it was in the 80s. We are not a very extreme organization. but it would make a ton of difference to bring it back to 500,000. And if we did that, then I think, there might be some short-term shortages, and it'd be okay to have some guest worker programs, very short-term.
So we kind of talked about this, but one policy change you would enact tomorrow, outside of E-Verify, let's say. What's the next one on your list? One policy change, if you could whisper in Donald Trump's ear.
Well, yeah, the big thing is putting an end to chain migration as we know it. And that was started in 1965, really, basically in 65. And it's just a thing that says it turns our immigration system over to the immigrants. The American people don't really have any say who comes in, for the most part. We bring an immigrant in, and then the immigrants choose the next immigrants. So,
Right.
So we believe in the nuclear family, including not only the husband or wife you have and the children you have, but you come in and you're saying you marry somebody, that's fine. That's it. Nuclear family, minor children, a spouse. Everything else, no. Parents, not. There's a carve out in the sense that our deal, and there's bills for this. And the parents can be here on visitor visas. That means they can't take American jobs. They can come here and live with their children and take care of their grandchildren, and absolutely not be eligible for any government support.
Right.
Be their children, take care of them. But that's the big thing. That would change everything. That's what the Jordan Commission, the bipartisan Jordan Commission under President Clinton, that's what they recommended. Stop chain migration. It's the accelerator that moved us from 500,000 to 1 million.
Well,
I think he's the third one to tell us that, right?
I was going to say one of the first
right.
two said, one of the first two said that they predicted over 10 or 20 years that every immigrant represented 12 more. And so it just, it's going to multiply at a factor over the next 10, 20 years that we just can't handle.
Well, now you mentioned it, but the legal level has been between 900,000, 1.2 million for about 30 years, because there are some limits. What happens though is you build up the expectation. So you've got millions and millions of people who are in line. Mm-hmm. And you will find the newspapers are terrible about this. As a former newspaper man, I just hate to see this kind of, as you see, reporters will say, this person, like somebody that got deported recently, and it's a big deal, and says they're just waiting for their green card. Waiting for the green card means that there's 6 million people ahead of them in line on the chain migration thing. So it creates this. So what happens is people then come on as illegal aliens and think of themselves as, I'm just waiting. I come on in waiting. So yeah, it's
you should be waiting on the other side of the border.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And but last question, what gives you hope that we can have consensus on this issue, or is there no hope?
Well, this is the immigration issue that I've been in for 35 years is, I don't want to suggest too much here, but I sort of feel like I know what it was like to be involved in World War I during that 4-year war, right? They're just kind of fighting back and forth over, I don't know how many miles of land. That's what it's been. That's what it's been like the whole time I've been in here. We basically, groups like Numbers USA, other people involved in the same thing, we stopped all the amnesties. We stopped for the most part, the increases. But we haven't we have no offensive victories. We haven't reduced anything. But the other side is fighting. So we've just been World War I, trench warfare, or football, which maybe is a little better, between the 40-yard lines. Nobody's getting anything. So the hope, I think, for the American people themselves and the workers is that the people that are of some goodwill. So I'm not talking about, I'm sorry, I'm going to offend I know I'm going to offend some people, but I'm not talking about the crazy edge of the libertarians who kind of think that national borders don't matter. And I'm not talking about the leftists. I'm just talking about liberal to centrist Republicans and centrist to conservative, liberal to centrist Democrats and centrist to conservative Republicans, is to say, let's come to some kind of agreement. The agreement is probably going to mean another amnesty. It's probably going to mean that. I can't think of anything else that can be given to the other side from me. Because of what's happened, you've got people who've been here so long. I don't think the fact they've been breaking the law for 30 years or 20 years says that now they deserve to be legal, but they've been here so long that it's harder and harder, to move them out. And it may be that that's the price, that you have some kind of amnesty. But the amnesty, unlike the previous amnesty, the amnesty comes only after you've totally resolved the illegal immigration situation, and after you've put in place all these cuts on future legal immigration.
I've kind of actually argued something like that. I know I was quoted in the AP probably prior to Trump, probably during the Obama administration, is, when people say, oh, let's round them up and send them home. It's like, well, what if somebody's home was around the corner from your house for the last 20 years? And, so it comes, we try to look at things from a practical application. It sounds like you do as well.
Yeah.
Where, are we really, I don't believe that we are a country that's going to round people up, put them on trains and ship them across borders the way, Nazi Germany did.
Right. People who've deep in. The thing is they have no legal, no moral argument for mercy in that sense.
Yeah.
But they do. It's hard, right?
From a practical application, I like where you come up with it.
Yeah, and the thing is that we're in between the 40-yard lines. If we actually want to if both sides want to score a goal, we've got to give up something. And I think that's probably what we're going to have to give up, something like that. And the other side is going to have to give up this idea of flooding the labor markets. And I think a lot of people on the liberal side, somehow or another, they do think that they are importing Democratic voters, and they are right in the short term. But as we've seen, what's been happening with Hispanics, and Democrats are starting to lose black men, not in the same proportion Democrats are losing Hispanics, but they're the proportion of black men that are moving toward Republicans and Trump have gone from like 10% to 20%. That's pretty.
Well, and in Georgia, it was worse than that. It went from 8% in 2020 to almost 25%.
That's amazing.
In 2024. So you're talking about a triple in 4 years of support. Now granted, he was at 8%, so you could argue the numbers that it's easier to move those percentages. But, of course, if you multiply it by 3 again and get 75%, I don't know that that's going to happen in 4 years. But it's certainly, I agree with you that Democrats obviously can't lose 25% of African American men and still win elections without importing new voters. And I've also said and written in our newsletter that's named Reasonable Arguments as well that eventually folks like you mentioned, the people who are coming here for the most part want to work. They want to achieve the American dream. They want to have lower taxes and all of those things. And so they're not coming here to pay taxes. They're coming here to live the American dream. And so I think eventually that's what I agree with you, that's eventually what's going to happen.
And this is where I wish the president would focus more on what I think are the main issues, which is that, he tends to be most interested in the criminal aliens, and I can understand why that's so important. But the fact is that most illegal aliens, they're not committing fiscal crimes and all that kind of stuff. They're here to work. They just don't obey they don't obey the immigration laws. It's not that these are bad people. I think once you get your head around the fact that we are not, for the most part, trying to keep bad people out of the country, we're trying to say that you can have too much of a good thing. If anybody's that has immigrant neighbors, including illegal aliens. Here in Arlington, Virginia, my kids went to school with a lot of illegal aliens. That's the way it is in Arlington, Virginia. They're nice kids.
And every school in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go
but
ahead.
I think this comes down to where we need another visual because you did the Gumball example with poverty and immigration, but maybe we need to do the same thing with jobs or something like that, where people literally see how many jobs are being taken away from the American people for these aliens that are coming in.
And it's absolutely that's to visually see it, because the fact is that Steve Camrad over at the Center for Immigration Studies does a great job on putting these charts together. But the workforce participation of the native born Americans has been going down for 30, 40 years, while we've been bringing in all these foreign workers. So we're hollowing out the work ethic, and we're hollowing out partly because the jobs at the bottom are paying so much less in real wages than they used to, and because employers they're kind of doing the right thing in terms of just the bottom line, because they've got these people coming across the border. They're driven to work for a lot less working conditions, wages, you name it. So we've got to, we've got to. It's just not personal. By the way, I'm in a situation where the Numbers USA is a truly bipartisan organization in terms of our staff, our board, our funders, you name it. We don't see this as being a conservative or liberal or Republican or Democratic situation, although we have to say that over the last 15 years, it's been almost entirely Republicans that have been, as far as we're concerned, doing the right thing. At some point, Democrats, and there are a lot of Democratic analysts now, they're speaking up and saying, we've got to change our position on immigration, because we are taking the anti-work, for the Democratic Party to continually take the anti-worker position and really the anti-Black position. It's just killing the non-college educated Black male working class. This has got to stop. So I see this in many ways. I can make the case that some kind of a compromise would finally get an answer. They would do away with chain migration, get overall legal immigration down to 500,000. It has some amnesty in it. You could almost not do. There's not almost no better pro Black underclass thing you could do than that. So why wouldn't liberals jump onto that?
Well, I think we all want to see Americans succeed,
Yeah.
right? And so when we see fellow Americans, I don't think supporting poor people is Democratic alone. I mean, I think Republicans want to see people be able to move through up classes as well. And, we may have a different way of skinning that cat because we believe in teaching somebody to fish rather than giving them a fish. But, that's probably for another podcast.
Well, and immigration, but the immigration has just made it where you just drive so many people out of the labor market. And it's really hollowing out America. That's the reason. That's the reason, as far as I'm concerned, it's important to look for some kind of compromises to get us. I mean, what does it do any of us any good to fight between the 40-yard lines for another 25 years?
Right.
Agreed.
Well, Jennifer, do you want to close us out? Roy Beck from numbersusa.com. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoy this episode, we want to make sure you subscribe, like, share with your friends, post on social. And Jennifer, do you have key takeaways or?
No, I think we're good. Roy, do you have a way for people to contact you if they want to get in touch?
They can contact me at roy@numbersusa.com.
All right. That's perfect. Well, thank you, Roy, so much for joining us today.
What a great discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
This has been Reasonable Arguments, News and Nonsense. There is so much BS on the mainstream media news, but you knew that. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. See you next time as husband and wife duo Jamie and Jennifer keep it real on Reasonable Arguments.